others, but I thought you were very nice.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. We are so glad to see so many of you here today for the commemoration of Pauline Frances Christensen, who I think everyone in the room knows and loves very dearly. To begin with, if you have a program, we'll go ahead and ask now if Kent Christensen can offer an opening prayer, after which Carolyn Christensen will give us our first reading.
Let us be reverent. Dear Lord, we thank you for the wonderful life that you have bestowed upon Pauline Frances Christensen. We thank you for the people here that truly loved her and her family and friends, and the wonderful life that she had with Uncle Bill through the many adventures through the years. We ask that you continue to bless this place, bless the people here, and especially bless the staff for all the work they do with the people here. In your name, amen.
Amen.
Yeah, she's a wicked thief. Sorry. Hello, I'm Carolyn Christensen. I'm married to Don, who is Pauline and Bill's youngest son, and I'm happy to be here today to honor my mother-in-law. I'd just like to read to you first the obituary that was in the paper. We don't have copies. So, Pauline Christensen passed away on Sunday, March 4th at Park Merced of natural advanced age causes. She was born August 22nd, 1925 in Wyoming to Ardrey and Rosetta Boyce. She had two brothers, of whom are deceased now. Pauline met her sweetheart Bill right before Pearl Harbor, and they married on September 12th, 1941. While Bill was serving in the Air Force, she graduated from cosmetology school and worked as a beautician until she gave birth to her baby girl, Arlene. And I didn't put that in the obituary, but you know that Arlene was in a tragic accident at the age of 2, and she passed away, as also did Pauline's mother at the same time. That was a hard time for her. After the war, Pauline and Bill moved to the family farm and joined the dairy business. During that time, Pauline had 4 sons that were raised by her and her husband, Bill. She became an accomplished pilot with a twin-engine rating and flew all over the United States during her reign as the Queen of the Flying Farmers Association. That was a big deal, and she was a beautiful queen. Many years later, Bill and Pauline sold the dairy farm to the Migliazzo family on North Fox Road, who continue to operate it today. Pauline supported Bill in his flying career, and eventually they came back to Merced and actually moved into their family home that Bill's father had built, right? Yes, okay. Pauline and Bill were faithful members, and always have been, of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in the Yosemite Ward. She's preceded in death by her husband Bill, infant daughter Arlene, and son Jerry, whose wife was Jan. She is survived by her sons Marvin, wife Lana, Edward, wife Dana, and Donald, wife Carolyn. Pauline's extended family members include 12 grandchildren, 23 great-grandchildren, and 1 great-great-grandchild. Heartfelt gratitude has really extended here to Pauline's Merced family, consisting of Barbara and Kent Christensen, Megan, Rob Hethel, Karen and Jerry McKenzie, the Migliazzo family, and Park Merced Assisted Living, Heinz Hospice, cherished family and friends. And as I noted in, where's Megan? There she is in Facebook. She put in a really great sentence, heaven has gained another angel. And the service is now. So I just want to share 2 other quick things with you. First off, I'm wearing a necklace today that maybe some of you recognize that Pauline always wore. And if you wanted to come up and smell my necklace, it smells like Taboo, which was her favorite cologne. And when I first met Pauline, when Don and I were dating, I had gotten some Taboo as a Christmas gift. And then I met Pauline and found out that she loved Taboo, so we had Taboo in common. And over the years, I'm sure many of you have given her Taboo as gifts, because that was her signature. That was her signature wonderful smell. And so my daughter, one of the grandchildren, also wrote a little tribute that I'd just like to share a little bit of it with you. She said, my grandma passed away today. She was 92. She was a mother, a wife, a dairy farmer, a pilot, a grandmother, an aunt, a daughter, a friend. She helped me make my very first sewing project, which was a poodle skirt, and she still has it to this day, because Pauline was a wonderful seamstress, amongst other things. Artist, seamstress, all of those things. She says she was a tough woman who dealt with a lot in life. She buried 2 children, one of which she lost when she was 18, and that was Arlene. And then she went through the Great Depression, as did some of you that are here today. She was an artist, a hairstylist. Maybe some of you had her do, she did your hair. And the Queen of the Flying Farmers Association. What an amazing woman. My grandfather also passed away back in June, and she has been saying since then that she wanted to go be with him. I can imagine how joyful the reunion was with Arlene, her daughter, who she had to lose at age 2, and her mother when she was only 18, with Jerry, her son, who recently passed away, and now her husband. Among many more, I'm sure. They are all having a wonderful reunion. And Lindsay said, I'm so grateful for the knowledge I have that there is more to come after we leave this earth. I love my grandmother, and it's probably about it. So anyway, those are some of the things that I want to share with you about Pauline. Thank you.
We'd like to turn a little bit of time over to Karen McKenzie, who has a reading, after which Carolyn, when she composes herself, and my daughter Samantha and I will have a musical number that we'll present. Karen.
Hi, I'm Karen Christensen McKenzie. Pauline was my aunt, and today I'm going to be reading Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verses 1 through 8. There is a time for everything and a season for every activity under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to tear down and a time to build. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to scatter stones and a time to gather them. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to search and a time to give up. A time to keep and a time to throw away. A time to tear and a time to mend. A time to be silent and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace. Thank you.
Where's Jerry? Jerry.
Pauline loved hymns, and this is an old hymn. It's called Abide With Me, and so I think she would like that.
Well, you'd think I'd be getting good at giving a eulogy after having done my father in June. First of all, I'd like to note that my two brothers, Edward, who is older than me, and then Marv, who is older than Ed, were not able to be here. Marvin is in Florida right now, had some things there that he couldn't get away from. And my brother was recently diagnosed with a very severe illness and was also unable to come. But we contacted them and asked them if there was anything that we should share on their behalf, and they gave us a few things. I think I'll start with Ed. Ed's my unusual brother. Ed was the only one who followed in my dad's footsteps and went into the military. And he's a great man. He always wanted to be special to both my parents. And he was in his own way. As many of you know, my mother got her pilot's license after my dad convinced her that she needed to do that, and eventually went on to get her IFR, which is her instrument flight rating, as well as her twin engine rating, which is kind of unusual. I know Amelia Earhart did that at one time as well. But my mother did a lot of flying, and for some reason she picked Ed to do a lot of that flying with her. And they, together, just the two of them, did quite a few flights across the United States. And Ed always cherished those opportunities. And there were times when my mother even let him steer. I want to also share another thing about Ed that I think was kind of unusual. My father was an avid cigar smoker for many years. He would go out and milk the cows twice a day, and after he milked the cows in the evening, he would come in and have a can of beer and a cigar. And we always thought that was kind of cool. All of us four boys. I remember I was probably about 7 or 8. Yeah, probably about that. And all four of us were out in the silage trailer smoking a cigarette. And my mother discovered that, as mothers often do. And she says, well, if you guys want to smoke, you come into the house. She sat us all around the dining room table and gave each one of us a big cigar. And I didn't know anything about smoking, so I would just suck in that smoke and blow it right out of my mouth. But Ed, I guess he knew enough about smoking that you were supposed to inhale. And I don't know if you're supposed to do that with cigars, because he got through one, and then he says, I'm ready for a second one. And Mother gave him the second one, and within about 5 minutes he was in the bathroom puking. I don't think he wanted to smoke cigars anymore. I never saw him do it yet. Ed was probably the one of my brothers that I was the closest to. But my brother Marvin, when we asked him about some of his memories, he recalled the several times that we would come to Merced and be with Mother and Daddy when we were out on Fox Road in my grandfather's house. And we'd all sit around reminiscing about some of the crazy things we did as kids. And, well, I think I should read it, because Lana put it in good words. Nice to Mom went. The only thing that Marv thought of to share was when one time the boys were together with Mother and Daddy and started reminiscing, sharing stories about growing up, how surprised, maybe even a little bit shocked Mom and Dad were that so many of those experiences had gone without being discovered until then. Mom shared that she was glad she hadn't known before, because she wasn't sure how she would have handled it had she known at the time. I remember Mom's creativity, making matching clothing for the girls and their dolls, the homemade Raggedy Ann and Andy dolls for each of our children, making up personalized stories for Amy on road trips so she and I would take the time, take with them and when Amy was little. The terrific, loving mother-in-law she always was to me, making me feel more like her daughter. We called Mom and Dad nearly every Saturday during their last several years. If we happened to miss, we heard all about it. The next time we called, Mom was surely be missed. Next time we called, Mom will surely be missed. She was a friend to so many and cared about each one. We love you, Mom. So happy for you that you are back with Dad. Now, if I could, I want to share just a few of my experiences with my mother. Some of you know that I am an artist, and I think I got that spark of art from my mother. She was quite an artist. We've got paintings that she did, and they have been dispersed to family members since their passing. Also, when I was 2 years old, my father had purchased a trailer. And this wasn't your typical trailer. It was solid steel, and it was a military trailer. And it had a 4-foot wide deck, which is typical of something like that. But on the side, it had these big things that stood about this high off the ground. It had a double axle. And he used to take the tractors and put them up on that thing to haul them around. And this thing had a huge tailgate that consisted of 2 sections that would come down that he could drive the tractor up onto it. And it had a steel bar that connected those 2. When I was 2 years old, and my Ed was about 4 and a half, and Marv was about 6, we were climbing on that trailer one day, just being kids. Well, the trailer, it turned out, the tailgate had not been latched. The 2-year-old Donald was crawling up the back of that thing, and it fell down. It landed on my knee, just above my knee, and almost cut it off, almost cut my leg off. My brothers looked. 6-year-old Marvin came over and lifted the thing, said, "Get out of there." So I crawled out, and then he dropped it, and Ed and Marv just took off. They ran into the house to get Mother. And I'm 2 years old, and I'm thinking, I don't want to die. So I start dragging my bleeding leg across the dirt driveway. My mother comes out and looks at it, picks me up, takes me to downtown Merced to the doctor. Now, we called him a doctor. Sometimes I wonder if he was just a vet. Because my mother put me on the table, and I'm sitting there, and I can remember this. I was 2 years old. I can remember sitting there looking at my leg, and I remember thinking, that looks like Mother had just cut a quarter section out of a tomato. The doctor said, "Well, we'll just sew him up. I'll clean it up a little bit, and we'll sew him up." So he cleaned it up, and he got ready to sew it. And my mother said, "Well, shouldn't you give him some Novocaine?" "Nah." "He's just a kid, he won't remember." I remember like it happened yesterday. Edward and Marvin were out in a car across the street, and they said they heard me screaming. It was an event, and if we weren't in this room, I would show you the scar. It's still there. Another event that I already told you about the cigar, so that's enough about me. I want you all to know, if you don't know already, that Pauline Frances Christensen was one of the most wonderful people who ever lived on this earth. Anybody who knows her had to have loved her. She lived a wonderful 92 years right by the side of her loving husband, who also lived a long and glorious life. as you all must agree, we will all miss her. But there will come a time when we'll be able to see her again, and it will be wonderful. I'm grateful for the opportunity to have spoken to you, and I'm grateful that you're all here today. We'd like now to have a musical number by Jerry McKenzie. And after Jerry is done, we'd like to open it up to any of you who might want to share a memory with us. So Jerry?
Okay, this one was picked for Pauline because she was our ray of sunshine. I'm sure you all recognize this song and you're invited to sing along. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when the skies are gray. I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away. The other night, while I was sleeping, I dreamed I held you in my arms. When I awoke, I was mistaken, and I know you are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when the skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away. Please don't take my sunshine away. That's for Pauline.
I want to share one more story. Sorry. I was about 4 years old, maybe a little older than that. My dad decided that the house on the south side of the farm was too small. So they decided to build the house on Bradshaw. My dad built that house, and my mother went to visit him one day while he was working, and I was there, and anybody who has been in the house knows that there's a fireplace, and on either side of the fireplace it's open. Living room is in the front, you go around, there's the dining room. Go around, you're in the living room. Go around, you're in the dining room. So I thought this was a great place to go run in. And there's just the rough wood on the floor. We hadn't put down the flooring yet. So I'm running around and Mother's talking to Daddy. And I come around this one end and something hurt. And I fell to the ground and I looked back. I had a 16-penny nail sticking in the bottom of my foot. And I'll never forget this because Mom was talking to Daddy and I go, Mother! She looks down, she looked at the thing, she looked at Daddy, she reached down, just pulled it out, carried on the conversation. And that was so typical of my mother because living on the farm, any of you live on a farm know that you just run into those kind of things on a regular basis. And as a mother who was used to that, it didn't worry her too much. Especially when she watched me get that tetanus shot. So we'd like to turn some time over to any of you now who would like to share some thoughts with us. So the time is yours.
Well, I didn't think it was going to be her last, but I'm glad that we were able to take her to see Christmas lights this year, this last year. she really enjoyed that, and she came here and bragged about it for about 2 or 3 weeks.
I want to add something about the taboo story. My aunt wore taboo my whole life, but as a little girl, I just thought that's how she smelled. I didn't know it was a perfume. I just thought Aunt Pauline smelled glorious at all times. And when I went to work at Farmers Insurance, another girl wore taboo, and I came up to her and I go, "You smell just like my aunt," and it kind of freaked her out a little bit. And she goes, "Well, I'm wearing taboo," and I go, "Taboo?" And she goes, "Yeah, it's a perfume." I go, "It is?" I didn't realize. My aunt also was a hairdresser. She cut hair, and she used to cut my hair as a little girl. And my father was Bill's brother. And my father was also the only man that I know of that didn't like long hair on girls. He liked short hair. So my brothers probably had buzz cuts, but mine was a boy cut. So our hair was always real short. I had this, huge forehead. The bangs would start up about, 3 inches up. And I have, Pauline was amazing. She was, she did ceramics, she painted, she sewed. The Raggedy Ann dolls at one point in my life had a Raggedy Ann and a Raggedy Ann doll that Pauline made. She was amazing. When our parents died in '91 and Bill and Pauline came back to Merced to live in our grandparents' home. And that was such a blessing for Kent and I, because we had lost our parents. We were young. Kent was 36, I was 38. And they filled that void. So we thank you for sharing your parents with us. I'll miss them.
Well, I'm going to try to say something, but I apologize if I get emotional. Grandma taught me what it was. I'm Pauline's granddaughter. Grandma taught me what it was to be a strong, independent, loving, kind, beautiful woman. Like she inspired me, and I aspired to be like her. I used to look forward to spending time with her when I was a kid. I got to spend a lot of time with her when I was little. My parents would take trips and they would drop me at Grandma and Grandpa's. I'm sure they were happy for the break, but I thought it was a vacation. And Grandma, boy, I would get there and we would talk about all the things we were going to do, and I had a list. I always she would take me to do pottery. She would teach me. I'm terrible at sewing, so we didn't do much of that, but she would sew for me. And I would pick out all of the fashionable things I wanted. Terribly embarrassing outfits, but she'd make them for me. And she'd make my dolls matching outfits. And she told the most wonderful stories. We'd go on these long road trips, and we would sit in the back of the car together, and we'd look up at the horizon of the mountains. And she would make up these elaborate, wonderful stories. She taught me what it was to be creative, and I just loved her so, so much. When Grandma was accepting of you and where you were at and loved you, and it was like she could look deep into your heart when she was with you. She grabbed your hand, probably many of you experienced this. She grabbed your hand and she would just hold it, and she would look into your eyes, and you knew that she loved you from beginning to end. And I've never known anyone who was able to give that level of love. She had a lot of neighbors over the years that became family, didn't she? Grandma adopted people everywhere she went. If you knew Pauline, you were family. And that level of love emanating from a person, again, she just inspires me every day. And to have been able to be a part of her life was an incredible thing. Thank you.
Can I say something real quick? I think these pictures on the back of them as young married people and then as old married people are fantastic. I think whoever chose them could not have chosen a more beautiful picture in tribute to Uncle Bill and Aunt Pauline, who are not my aunt and uncle. They're my brother-in-law's aunt and uncle. So, but that picture is wonderful. Those pictures are wonderful.
Yeah.
There, you can see the love.
Yeah.
We were all talking earlier today about what a knockout beauty Mother was when she was young.
Maybe start following.
Yeah. And Daddy never got fat. He was skinny from day one. I hate to embarrass you like this, but this is my oldest brother's wife. Yeah. You saved your chair.
You did.
Yes.
Well, I was lucky enough to be with Pauline in her last few hours. And we walked into the room and, you know, Karen's, hi Aunt Pauline. She was asleep. And everybody else in the room kind of meanders, oh, Pauline. And I come up to her at the end of the bed and I go, hello, Pauline. And she opened her eyes, gave me a big old kiss. And she went back to sleep. I felt very lucky. She was wonderful.
Can I say something? Yes. Our said she did always shake our hands and always have that smile. And I wished I'd have known all the wonderful things she had done all her life.
Yeah.
That was fantastic.
Yeah.
This is a beautiful picture.
I'm Dino Migliazzo. My wife asked me not to say anything. but I would go home and I would feel guilty about not saying something. So when Bill and Pauline moved back to Merced, we lived on one side of the house when your grandma was living there, and then Bill and Pauline moved out, and then we flipped and moved to the other side of the house. So we were their neighbors on both sides. And as our children came along, unfortunately, both our children's grandfathers had already passed. But so Bill became their grandfather, and Pauline became their third grandmother. So they were lucky to have three grandmothers. And really, Pauline took care of our children like they were her own. And as they were growing up, and my wife couldn't take the pressure anymore from three kids, she would send them over to Pauline's house through the backyard. And she said, I don't care what you do with them, just keep them for a while. And especially with our youngest, our daughter, she said, I don't care what you. So Dina's gotten really good at sweeping, mopping, dusting, cooking, and it was all taught by Pauline. So, and then when Pauline couldn't take it anymore, she'd send her back home. But things that Pauline enjoyed that you may not know, she loved the smell of gardenias. And we had a plant in our backyard, and she never missed an opportunity to smell the plant. She loved Dr. Pepper. And so every time that, and she's not, Bill got really mad at us because we would always bring Pauline a Dr. Pepper because she liked it. Bill didn't want it. He said, you know, that's not good for you. She would just smile and she would still.
Who outlived who?
And so I think you think back and you look at the life that Pauline was able to accomplish, living on the farm and having 4 boys and a daughter, and all the things that she accomplished, she really was tremendously remarkable. And the talents obviously have been passed on to the next generation, but she really should inspire all of us to be more like her. And she had a big heart, and she cared for people, and she accepted everybody. And I think that was really important. It was lessons that our children were able to learn from her. Vincent loved Grandpa Bill's sweet corn and Grandpa Pauline's apple pie. And it was special when we were neighbors. And so I know our children, as well as my wife and I, are going to miss them, both of them very much. And it doesn't surprise me to see everyone here recognize the goodness in her heart, because she was that way with everybody. So it was a real pleasure for us to be their neighbors for so many years, and we're going to miss them very much.
I didn't know Pauline until I came to Partners Inn. And she was a very loving person.
Yep. Right. I'm going to share another story. I mentioned in the last story how good my mother was at not getting panicked. When I was in the 5th grade, I didn't wear glasses. And I didn't find out until I got into the 5th grade that I needed glasses. And the reason, the way I found out, was kind of an interesting story. My mother was always trying to help me be creative. And I'm very grateful for that, because it gave me a lot of opportunities to make things. I used to make airplanes out of cereal boxes and things like that. As long as I had a cereal box, a pair of scissors, and some cellophane tape, I was in 7th heaven. And my parents loved that because I could entertain myself. And at this one point, I wanted to make a satellite. And so I got a ping pong ball. And I thought, how can I hang this ping pong ball from a string so I can pretend that it's a satellite? And so I went into the kitchen and I got the ice pick. And I went, I took the thing and I poked a hole in it. And I thought, well, that's great for the string going in. How am I going to get the string to come out? So I bent it down just a little bit so I could come out another side, you know, to make 2 holes. And as I did that, right into my eye. And I screamed, "Mother! I just poked myself in the eye with an ice pick." And she came running in. That's the only time I've seen her run in an emergency situation like that. And she looked at my eye. There was no blood or anything. So she got on the phone to the eye doctor, and he says, "Will you put him in the back seat, tell him to keep his eyes closed and bring him in," which she did. And it had gone right through the cornea and into the not the pupil, but the iris, and it just in and out. And I still have a scar to this day. When I go into the eye doctor, they'll say, "Well, what's that?" And I give them the story. And but I found out that I had to have glasses after that. But she didn't panic, in spite of the fact that her son had just poked himself with an ice pick. She didn't panic, and that was so typical of her. Any other stories that anyone would like to share? I've got tons, but I don't want to keep you here. If not...
Well, I'll just say real quickly, I recognize the beads here, and I recognize this smell. It's so typical of Pauline.
Yeah, that, and my dad always wore Old Spice.
Old Spice.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, what we'd like to do now is we'd like to have Amy give us a closing prayer, after which there's plenty of food and chances to mingle. Oh, that's right. You want to talk about the video real quick?
We can play the video during refreshments.
Okay.
Our dear Heavenly Father, thank you for allowing us this opportunity to all come together and honor and speak about and share memories of a wonderful woman that was such an influence and inspiration in our lives. Please watch over her, give her a big hug from us, and tell her how much we love her and we miss her, and what a great and wonderful person that we know she was, and how happy we are that she's with Grandpa again. And give her a nudge to keep her eye out for us as we finish our journey here. We love you, and we're thankful for your guidance in our lives, and please watch over our grandma. We say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
we have about 8 minutes of wonderful pictures. Old and new, embarrassing outfits, grandma in a bikini. Right? She was a hottie. And of lovely, lovely pictures of family and friends, and my sister Gwen put that together, and it turned out so lovely with help from many, many folks in this room. And so we'd like to play that for you if you're up for it. There's some fun pictures in there, and if nothing else, well, we can have a good laugh. One of them, it looks like she might be skinny dipping. She's not. But we'll set that up if you're up for it.
Yes.
Why don't, while we get things set up, you grab some snacks and then come back and then we'll play it while you have a treat. Does that sound all right? Cool. That's probably